welcome back to Cattus Island County Park. Welcome back to the salt marsh. My name is Nikki Vernachio, one of the senior park naturalists here at Cattus Island County Park, and I'm here at one of our most important habitats here at Cattus Island, the salt marsh. Now, if you visited us about 2 months ago on our Facebook Live, we visited the salt marsh just as it was starting to turn green. Just seeing small sprouts that were coming up for the beginning of our spring and summer season. So I wanted to get back out here to show you what it looks like right before summer. Tomorrow is actually the first day of our summer, so I'm very happy and excited because summer is one of my favorite seasons, that's for sure. So if you did come and visit us back on that Facebook Live, or if you want to check out YouTube on our last salt marsh experience, just take a look at the colors of the salt marsh. It really just even amazed me looking back to see how different that salt marsh looked then, how brown and gray it looked, compared to how bright and emerald green it looks now. So back then, all those brown grasses had died off, and these bright new green grasses are all the new growth. And the grasses here in the salt marsh are a big producer of food. So here in the marsh, it's a food web. So we have food web that helps to connect all different creatures around the bay, from small little shrimp that can be found out here in the ditches to large bluefish that can be caught out in the bay, and even mammals that can be walking around here at the park. So mammals actually come here out into the salt marsh, and how I can tell is as I came out this morning to take a peek to see what was going on today, I found a little bit of animal droppings or scat or poop. So this scat is from a mammal. I'm kind of guessing it probably is from a raccoon, but we also have mammals that come onto the marsh like river otter or muskrats. Raccoons, deer will actually come out into the marsh and graze on some of the grasses or drink a little bit from the water, and fox as well. So mammals really use the salt marsh too to get lots of food sourced from it. So the sun shines down on these grasses and it gives it all its energy, and these grasses that are laying down almost looks like a cow maybe licked it with a big tongue. This is called Spartina grasses, Spartina patens, or salt hay. And this is one of the common grasses here in the marsh, and it usually grows in an area of the marsh that's a teeny bit drier. Little drier part of the marsh is where you'll find these cowlicks. But underneath the cowlicks, when you pull it back, you can often find little tunnels that might be underneath from small mammals like moles or mice that are in there. They make little channels or tunnels that go throughout. You can find teeny tiny snails, like here's a salt marsh snail right there. He says, what's going on, all this bright light? And you can find little critters like fiddler crabs, or even insects like ladybugs or praying mantis like to hang out here too. So in the salt marsh, where the grasses grow kind of gives us a clue as to how wet or dry an area is. As I said, this salt hay grows in a little bit drier spot. We're near a little bit of a hill because this is a high tide bush. They grow on a little bit higher clumps that are out in the marsh. And just to the left here, you'll see these very spiky grasses just right here, right next to us. And this is called Spartina Alterniflora, or salt marsh cordgrass. So it's a little spikier type grass, and this tells me that I could very well get my feet wet if I start walking around in this area here. So knowing the plants of the salt marsh kind of helps you to see what type of habitat is around here, because the marsh is always getting wet, some areas wetter than others, and it's always getting inundated or covered with salty type water. So the plants and animals that live here have to be used to living with salty and wet and dry times. There's a cool little critter that lives out here in the marsh. Sometimes it gets people nervous because it's a spider. It's a type of spider that crawls around in the grasses. I haven't seen any yet since we were out here though. But this spider has a really unique ability. When the tide comes in, they stay in the grasses and they'll actually fall asleep. They go almost into a coma. When that tide goes back out again, they wake up and pop up and go about their business. So it's a very special spider that can live out here in the salt marsh environment. So we know a lot of animals and plants depend on the salt marsh in this area for food or for habitat for shelter. But did you know that the salt marsh really helps to clean up the bay and the pollutants that might be in the bay or trash? So right down below us here, I came across something that washed up, and it's really just a plastic container. It came in with the tide. It gets distributed or stuck in the grasses, and when the tide goes out, it gets left behind. And what we can do at times is go and have a salt marsh cleanup, kind of help clean up things that are dropped off. But that's one of the reasons the salt marsh is so helpful here around the bay, because it will trap things that are floating around through the water and help clean out some of the chemicals or pollutants that might be in the water as well. So as we look out and about, you might see off in the distance some poles that are sticking up. Those are very large nests. We have two of them in this area called Osprey Nest, and an osprey is a large hawk. It's called a fish hawk because they eat mostly fish. Right now there's a couple on each nest, and they have young. So we're so happy this time of year. They're feeding their young, getting them big and fat and plump and ready to grow and get ready to fly. So these chicks are probably about, I'd say about 3 weeks old. They're probably about this big, and at times we can see them poking their heads out of the nest. So we have about 14 nesting sites here at Cattus Island that are all throughout the park. So if you ever come for a walk and check them out, you'll see those big stick nests that are on those flatworms. And those osprey are actually a success story of these birds that really have done a great job of coming back from a chemical called DDT. Now you'll notice that there's no trees that are growing out here in the salt marsh. Trees don't really like salty water. So the water that comes in and out is from the bay. It's called brackish. It's a mixture of salt and fresh water together, but it's enough salty water that the trees really only grow on the edges. So they're drinking fresh water, rainwater that's coming from the higher uplands type of area that's around there. You might see some trees that are dead, that are just sticks, and that's from the tide coming in a little bit more. Sometimes our tides seem to be a little bit higher, killing off some of those trees. But the salt marsh acts as a buffer or protection from the land behind it. So oftentimes we do get tidal flooding. In fact, the area I'm standing in now, when we have maybe a full moon with a nor'easter or even just a lot of rain, the water could be up to my waist, definitely making it hard to cross over to Cattus Island on the other side. But all that wave and flooding affects the salt marsh. It's really protecting the land that's behind it. So salt marsh is an important habitat that really protects the land behind it. If it was kind of the trees were up close up to the bay, definitely water and erosion would kind of wipe them out. Okay, so let me show you a couple more little critters that we have. I'm going to take our little dip net and kind of go through our ditches here. We have some little ditches that are called mosquito ditches. These are actually man-made channels that were put in many years ago. And this allows the bay water to come in. And it offers fish to come in from other areas and parts of the bay. And let's see what we can find today. Now I noticed this guy sitting there on the bottom. This is a horseshoe crab shell. Part of a horseshoe crab that's probably been kind of broken apart for quite some time. And this is kind of the middle piece of that horseshoe crab shell. Some little barnacles that are in there as well. Let's see. Doesn't look like we caught very much today, but that's okay. We've got days where you find more fish or others, but I did bring a friend with me that I thought you might be interested in seeing. The salt marsh is home to a great critter called the blue crab. So this blue crab actually lives inside of our nature center in one of our aquariums. We like to have them on display when we're open to show people what they look like. If you see how gorgeous he is, he's actually extremely blue for a blue crab. Sometimes they're a little bit blue on their claws and very green-ish type of a color, but he's a very blue, so he's a really pretty blue crab. Now here in New Jersey, you can go crabbing for these guys. You want to make sure that you stay within legal limits when you're catching them and bringing them back to eat. They've got those little swimming feet near the back that help them to swim. And up front, they got those two big claws that they're going to definitely use to protect themselves. Can you see his little mouth in the middle moving around? And those little eyes? So cool. Not sure if we can see or not. Let me try to tip him. Nope. See if we can get underneath him. If you see underneath him, he has underneath a shape that kind of looks like a candle or a rocket ship. And that kind of tells me that he's a male crab. If he were to have a shape very much like a triangle or a pyramid, that would be a female crab. So it's important to know what sex of a crab you're catching. If you're taking it home, you definitely kind of want to leave the females to have more eggs and produce more crabs. And definitely don't want to take any crabs that have babies or eggs or, underneath them. But he's a really cool guy. So he's back inside the Cooper Environmental Center. He'll go to live and be waiting when we open up for visitors to check out. So I want to thank you so much for visiting with me today, this day before the summer in our very green salt marsh here at Cattus Island County Park. We hope you have a great day. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you so much. My name is Nikki Vernachio from Cattus Island County Park.